All right, we're back. We are COMP397, and it's winter 2018, and we are week 4, part 1 of our broadcast. It's the finite state machine version 2. We have to finish what we did last week, right? I'm also going to make a short announcement that your peer reviews are due tonight at midnight. I put that on eCentennial, so please do that. And next week is your first playable release, and your first playable release should just be movement. I want to see your level. I want to see placeholder assets, not the final version, right? And I don't need 100% to have collisions next week. However, if you want to do collisions by next week, you can always look at the YouTube channel, and I have collisions outlined from last semester. You can always look last semester, and there may be some of you who know how to do it already, right? I'm going to use distance-based collisions, not AABB, axis aligned bounding box, because we're going to talk about why that's no good in this case. Okay, but for now, we're going to get right into our coding. For today, I want you to use a GitHub repo that we used from last week. So I'm going to go to GitHub last week. And I used a repo last week called COMP397 lesson 3. I'm going to start with that one. There's COMP397 lesson 3. I'm going to download this repo on my desktop. Right, so please do this with me. So here's on my desktop. And I'm going to expand it. There we go. So on my desktop now, I have this repository, COMP397, lesson 3 from W18. I'm going to change this to lesson 4A, or B, I mean. You guys are B. All right, so I'm going to be working with this one. I'm going to drag and drop it into my VS Code, all right, to start off. And we need to rename some stuff we put up before I put it up on GitHub. One of the things I need to rename is this part. So this has got to be 4B. And also, I need to do the rest, just because for completeness, it should be 4B and 4B. And now I'm going to put it up on GitHub. And the way to do that, of course, like last time, is I'm going to CD into this folder. So change directory. This works on Windows and Mac. And I'm going to git init, git add dots, git commits, -m for message, initial commits. So that really creates my local repository. Okay, so if you did that, if you watched the video, that's all you need to get going. I need to make a new repository here on Centennial College for this one, so new. And we're going to call it the same name as my project, COMP397 W2018 lesson 4, if I can spell, type 4B, right? And then I'm going to take my last two lines of on the example site here, and just paste it, or right-click if you're a PC, on your terminal or command prompt. And now I have my folder. One thing I don't have is my node modules, because node modules don't get set up to GitHub. So I have to put in yarn. I'm just going to type in yarn and press enter. And what yarn does is it'll download all my node modules into my project. Otherwise, if you don't do that, if you downloaded my project, no node modules means no working. That's what it means, right? So that's the first thing. Next, I want to go back into VS Code for a second, and I want to launch my my task manager, right? So I'm going to do Control-Shift-B if you're a PC, or Command-Shift-B if you're a Mac. It's going to come up with build or watch. I want the watch task. Right, here's the watch task. And then what I want to do, going back to my terminal, is I want to launch light-server. And then what it'll do is it'll launch a web page for me, right? Hopefully one day. There it is, which is blank, like this. Because remember, we didn't finish the finite state machine last week. There was one thing missing from last week, and it was because I didn't call the one of the methods, the main method, and I'll show you where that is. So last week, what we did was, a recap, we created a finite state machine, and if you look at the I've got my core, right? And in my core, I have this switch statement, right? And the switch statement, what it does is it basically checks to see which scene it is, if it's the start scene or the play scene or the over scene. And what it does is if it's the start scene, then it'll launch my start scene. Now we have a couple problems which we're going to fix here, and I'm going to show you how to fix them. But inside my start scene, we had a problem that I didn't have time to resolve last week. We ran out of time. I made my welcome label and my start button in my start scene. I called my start scene from my constructor. And then when I went to my start scene, my start function, I didn't do anything. I have to call my main function. That's what was missing. So I'm going to say this dot main. So if I don't call my main, then this method will never fire, which means my welcome label, my start button, and my start button event listener will never be added to the scene. And that's why it didn't work. I just missed one line, right? Just didn't have time. So if I save this and go back, I have this. It's a little bit too close to my welcome button. I'm going to push my start button down a little bit. So I can say that in my start scene, if you notice it's 320 by 300, let's make this like 320 and 340. When I go back, you can see that there's some separation now between my welcome label and my start label. Except my start label doesn't do anything. What it's supposed to do is supposed to move me, if you look at the line number 16 here, it's supposed to move me into my play scene, but I don't have a play scene. And I got some problems. So one thing is I fixed the main problem. So I'm going to go into my GitHub and I'm going to put this up as a fix. So fixed start scene. That's what I did with this one. Okay, so I pushed that up. So now the start scene is fixed. If you can't keep up with me, please check on GitHub. But we need to make some other scenes here, all right? We need to make some other scenes. And I also have a problem with the way we're doing our game switching, our scene switching. Our scene switching right now says, hey, take a look at the current scene, and if the current scene starts off at start, that's great. But then somewhere down the line, I'm using my update function to switch the scene, and this is not correct. Not really. What we need instead, and I did this differently this morning, is I need some kind of state manager, right? Or a current state variable. So I'm going to create a new variable on the top called current state, which is going to be a number. And the current state, what it's going to do, right? It's going to start off as the same as the start state. So I'm going to say something like, I'll put it on the next line. So this is on line 39 now. I made this thing called current state. It's going to be equal to config.scene.start as well. Both of them are going to be the same. So they start the same. And then what I'm going to do is when one of them changes, it's going to go back to main. It's going to switch. So instead of it doing this way, where I check the scene and it's returning a number, that doesn't make any sense. Let's just change it to the current state. If the current state is different than the current scene, then go to main. And then somewhere down the line, I need to update my scene. So I'm going to put this scene update separate. Current scene dot update. So why am I doing this? Because if I've made it as part of this if statement, I don't always have to. I want to be able to check. I don't want to always go to main or check to go to main. And I want to update my scene separately, which means in my scene class, which I made earlier last week, here's my scene class. I asked to return a number. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to return void, which is what it should do, which means in my start scene, I can do the same thing. I don't need to return anything anymore because that was inefficient. I don't want to make too many more efficiency changes, but that is one we need to make. So then when I change my scene here, when my config.scene changes, I check to see that it's changed inside of my game right here. And when it changes, I send it to main. And when it comes to main, it removes all the children from the stage And then it changes the scene and adds all the scene to the stage. Well, hold on a second. I'm going to do this for everyone, right? I'm going to remove all children and add it to the scene for each of these cases, which means I don't have to do it per case. I can do it once. So I'm going to move this one to here. I'm going to remove all children first. I remove all the children from the stage first. Then, if it's config start, I'm going to instantiate a new object. What? And then this one, instead of doing this thing every single time, I'm only going to do it once. And I'm going to add my current scene at the bottom, because it doesn't make sense to do it every single time. So this is the real state of how it should look. Let's just save this and make sure that it still goes to the start scene. We're good. Now we need to add 2 more scenes, and I want to point out what we're doing here. Now there's a diagram here that I have on the board, but I'm going to draw it out so people can record it online, because you may have to refer to it. So I'm going to kick off my fireworks for a second. I'm going to draw some boxes to explain the scene again a little bit more carefully, right? So I'm going to make a new file just to draw with. Let's make it 640 by 480 for now. Here's my file, and I want you to think about the scene as like this. I've got my start scene. Here's my start scene. Oh, that's a nice color. I've got my play scene, and I've got my end scene. So these are the 3 scenes I have, right? And let's label them a little bit. That's a weird color, but who cares? So this is my starts, right? And I'm also going to make here's my play scene. That's what I want to have. And let's make also my over scene. We're going to call it over. Okay? What I want to do is I want to shift between them, right? And I need a state manager to do that, or it's called a finite state machine, which is what I talked about last week. That is going to be over here. This little finite state machine is going to run down here. And this is really going to be my game.ts. So game.ts is going to be down here. And this game.ts file, let's make it, I'll just put it over here with this. So game.ts, this is this one. And what this is going to do is going to say, well, you know what? I want to start off with my game scene, my start scene. That just did not work at all. Let's just change those to black, and we'll make that something like 5. I start off with my start scene. Sorry for the drawings. And then what I want to do is, with my start scene, maybe I can travel from my start scene to my play scene somehow, right? So I got to do this. And then from my play scene, if I play the game, and if I die, I'm maybe going to go to my game over scene, right? Does that make sense? So I start here, I go to my start scene, my play scene, I'm over scene. But what's really happening is I want to do this, but my game.ts is the controller. It controls where I'm going. It controls whether I'm going here or whether I'm going here. What you want to see is that there's some controls on the screen, like a button. Maybe there's a button on the scene, some kind of blue button, you know, as an example. That was not what I wanted. A blue button, let's say. And that blue button, which is a start button, is going to take us over to the other side. Maybe this says start too. So we're going to put the start button in here. And let's make this font a little bit smaller. So it's not going to be 50, it's going to be like 20. Here's my start button, right? And my start button, I'm going to take it over here, and there's going to be 2 buttons here, right? There's going to be some kind of, for now, I'm going to make a back button. And then I'm going to make a next button. Here's the next button. Now, this is not the scale. Don't worry about it. And then I want a back button over here. So what I can do is do this. I can go start, I can go to play, I can go back, or I can go next. right? That's what I want. I want to be able to today's lesson, I want to be able to traverse back and forth across the different scenes. That's what I want to do. That means I don't just have to go this way, but I can also go back to start. I can also do one of these, right? I can go back this way. I can also go back this way. And maybe what I want to do is also go back this way, like this, like to my menu, right? So if I can do those things, but all these moves that are up here, these arrows are actually going to be controlled by this thing down here, my controller. My controller tells me which way I'm going to go, right? So remember the switch statement, the switch case is in here. This is where the switch case is. So switch case. Right? So this switch case stuff, case, break. This stuff is the finite state machine itself. That is the finite state machine. It's right here, right? This part. That code, this little piece of code there, that piece of code is what's happening when I use my thing. It's switching depending on the case. So case, I'm going to start, go to start. Case, go to play. Case, go to over. Case, go to level 2. Case, go to level 3. Case, go to instructions. Case, go to whatever. You can add as many scenes as you want. That's what I'm building today with you guys. And I started that last week. All right, so we got this piece. Here's my case for start, and I got my case for play, but I don't have let's just code it, all right, and I'll comment it out. I need a case for my play scene and a case for my over scene. So I don't have a play scene, but right now I'm going to put it in. So here's what it looks like, play. And I don't have an over scene, but I'm going to put it in. It's called over, right? So let me comment those out for now. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go from, if it's my play scene, it's going to go to my play. It's going to instantiate my play object. If it's my game over scene, it's going to instantiate my over object. Okay, that's what it's going to do. Let's add those scenes in. So if I go back to scenes, you can see I only have a start scene, right? I'm going to make 2 more scenes. I'm going to make an over scene and a play scene. So new file under the scenes folder. I'm going to make a play.ts. And I'm going to make a new file called over.ts. And in my start scene, I'm going to take my entire start scene here. I'm going to copy all of it. I'm going to go to my play scene, and I'm going to paste it. I know that I need to make the play scene. Here's my play scene. And I'm not going to call this a welcome label. It's going to be called the play label. So let's rename it. So right-click, rename symbol to the play label. And there's not going to be a start button. There's going to be 2 buttons. It's going to be a next button and a back button. I don't have those buttons yet, but I'm going to make them. Actually, I already made them. Here's my next button. Actually, let's undo that. Let's rename symbol, next button. Right? And I'm going to add a new one called the back button. There's my back button. My back button is also going to have some kind of event. So the next button, what it's going to do is going to go to my over scene. My next button. So let's just rename this thing. So this is the next button click event, right? This is going to go to my game over scene. I don't have that yet. And my back button, right, is going to go to my start scene, or my play scene again. Sorry, my play scene. Back to my, oh wait. No, my start scene. Yeah. That's what it's going to do. So those are the 2 things that this is the event handler. I have my next button, right? And it says welcome. Let's not say welcome. Let's say game playing, whatever the game playing is. We'll change this to like 40 pixels, so it's too big. And what I'll do is I will make another button. Oops. Which is the back button. Okay, so there's two buttons. One of them is the next button, and the other one is the back button. My next button, none of them make sense to be appear in the middle of the screen. I'm going to put one on the right side and one on the left side. Okay, so my next button is going to be closer to the right. So I'm going to make it something like 500, and I'm going to make something like 140 on my my left button, my back button. Okay. And then further down here, I'm going to add my play label, add my next button. I also need to add my back button. So this is my next button. This is my back button. And this has got to say next button and back button. Okay. And then I also need an event listener. This is my event listeners. So these are event listeners for my buttons. I'm going to add another one of these for my back button. And it's got to go back button dot click. All right, so those are all the things. That's my scene. That's my play scene right now. Doesn't do anything. I've created my scene, but I need to do two more things, kind of, three more things. I need to add it to my index.html. I need to add it as a reference, right? I need to do those things because if I don't add my scenes, I have to modify my game.ts as well. If I don't do that, then I won't have my scene available. So let's add it to my index.html first. And I'm going to reorganize this a little bit. I'm going to say that my game scripts is cool, but there's going to be an area that there are, configuration files. I made one configuration file right now. It's called config, my scene config. And that's my enumeration that I talked about last week. Okay. Then I'm also going to talk about my, game objects. So these are my objects, right? Then there's my scene files, right? Scenes. I only have my start scene right now. Let's add another scene. So we need my start scene. Now, hold on a second. I got my start scene, and it's going to go to my play scene. That means my start scene must know about my play scene, which means I need to put it in reverse order. Because the way you put this inside your index.html, the next file knows about the file you're adding in, which means I need to add my over scene first, then my play scene, then my start scene. Otherwise, my start scene won't know about the other one. Kind of. I say kind of because it depends on the linkages you create. This is my over. This is my play. And I'm adding my over, even though my over is empty, I'm adding it in right now, just so that way it's done. The other thing is that I missed one thing in my play scene. I'm going to go back in a second. I got to also make my references just for completeness. Here's my references. I have my start scene, and I need to do the same thing with this. I need to add my references. For now, you don't know why I'm doing this, but later on you'll see why. Just trust me that you need to do this, just to prepare. Okay, got all that done. In my my core, so in my core, in my game.ts, I also got to uncomment this one, because that way it's going to create it, right? I made one mistake in my play scene. My play scene, when I made my buttons, they're all next. There's next and back buttons, but I don't have those next and back buttons right now. I need to make them. Well, if you look up on Slack, I've already made them. So let's take a look at Slack for a second. I added two buttons. Here's my back button and my next button, just to save time, right? I've got them here for you. So I'm going to download them. I'm going to go here, and you can download from Slack. Let's just download this back button, right? I'm going to do the same thing for the next button. I'm going to download this button. There he is. It's downloaded. And that's going to appear in my downloads. So if you actually look at my downloads, on the top, I got my next button, my back button, right? And what I want to do here with my next button and my back button is drag it into my project, which is this lesson 4B. I'm just going to do it in the operating system right now. So in my assets, images, I'm going to drag in my 2 buttons that I made. They're not exciting buttons. They're not exciting. Okay. That means inside of my project, right? Here's my project. Inside of my assets, images, I have my back button and my next button, which are pretty much the same as the other button. Okay. So this means inside of my core game.ts, I need to preload them too, because last week I talked about preloading and how I preloaded my click me button, which is like a test button. And then I have my start button, and now I have 2 more buttons, my next button and my back button. I got to add them in too. So let's add them in. So here's my next button. So everything you want to have in your game, you must preload, right? So here's my next button, which is next button.ping. I already made those. And my back button, which is my back button.ping. I don't need the comma here. Great. So now I have everything I need. I've transpiled. Let's see if it works, or if it gives me some crazy error. So I'm going to go back. If I click start, I got my back and my next buttons. Notice that they are pretty good, right? If I go back, oh man, what the hell's going on? How come my back button's not working and my next button's not working either, right? In fact, nothing's working. Let's see if I got errors, right? So in my console, I don't have any errors, and I can't go back or next. So what's happening? Why isn't it going back or next? Well, because I'm not setting my current state in my game.ts. If I go back to my game.ts, I set it one time, right? So here's my core game.ts. I set it up here in my start. I set that the current state is equal to the config state scene.start, right? But then when I change my state, I never set it to something else, and I got to do that somewhere. So down in here where I have stage, I want to say that my current state now is equal to my objects.scene.current, objects. Be okay. Game.current scene. Right, that's what I'm doing. I got to set this up for one time. And now that I've done that, now I can do the comparison again, right? Because what I do is, like I said to you, every frame I check, is my current state is equal? If it's not equal, then switch it, right? That's what main does, switches it, right? If it's equal, then avoid this, forget about this. Don't even do that. Check to see if the current state is equal to the global variable, right? And now if I do it, if I go back, I can go back. And I can go start and back. I can't go next because there is no next state yet. Next is the overstate. Let's fix that. So just like I did with my scene, I'm going to put this up on GitHub in a second. Just like I did with my scene, if I go to my scene class, if I go to my over is empty. I want to take my play state, which is very close to what I need, copy everything, go into my over state, and paste it. Again, it's just a placeholder. Here's my over scene. I don't need my next button because I'm not going to go anywhere else. This is my over state. It's my last state, so I can get rid of it. My play label is going to change from play label. I'm going to rename it to over label, right? I don't need a next button, so I can get rid of this event handler. But I need a back button, which is going to go to the play state. I don't need the next button. It should say game over, not game playing, right? I'll change that. And I don't need my back button to be on the left. It should be in the middle again, because there's only one button. I don't need to do this. I'm not going to add a next button to the scene, so I can get rid of it. And I don't need a next button listener, so I can get rid of that. Guess what? My overstate's done. Because all I've done is just remove stuff and rename it. That's all I've done, right? And now I should have the whole pipeline. right? Let's check it out and see if it works. If I did everything right. So next, start, next. Oh man, I did forget one thing. If you go to the core, I got to go to the game and I got to go to my state machine and uncomment this part because I didn't uncomment this. Otherwise, it'll never make an object of type overseen, right? And if I don't make it, it'll never show it. Let's try that again. So start, next, back, back, start, next, back. It works. This is your finite state machine. It basically takes you from one scene to the other scene and back. Now, in the game playing, I'm not going to have buttons, right? The game playing scene is going to have your enemies and your player. But there's going to be a state where if the player dies, he's going to go to game over, right? I'm just putting these buttons in place so you can have you can see how more than one scene works. And you can also have other scenes that are in between your play scenes. For example, let's say I want to put a transition instruction scene between my start screen and my play scene, my level 1, right? I could have a transition scene that says, okay, you're entering level 1. This is what you have to do. A, B, C, whatever instructions you have, right? Press start to continue. Start. Now level 1 starts. And then when you go from level 1 to level 2, let's say you need a number of points. I need 1,000 points to get to level 2 or 10,000 points, whatever. I hit that number. It triggers the state change. I'm going to move to the next state. But before I go to the next state, another transition scene is going to come up that's going to say, okay, you're going to level 2. Here's the new goals. Click the start button to go. And then you click the start button on that transition scene, takes you to level 2. I mean, there's lots of things you can do. You can also make transition scenes that only appear for a very brief time. Or you can make it so that the scene, instead of appearing like how I make it appear, instantiate, you can instantiate all your scenes and just move them into place. So you can say like, okay, I want to drop my scene in from the top, drops in. Or I want to drop my scene in from the right, because guess what? Each scene is a container, and the container will stretch to fit anything you put into it. So one thing that the earlier class had trouble with was, how is the updating working, right? Because remember that the update works like this. In my core game.ts, I have an update function. This update function is called every frame, 60 times per second. This update is calling the current scene update, whatever that is, whether it's a start scene, play scene, or end scene, or level 1, level 2, level 3, level X, whatever it's called. It's going to call that scene's update function. And then if I go to that scene, right, here's my scene, here's my play scene, and you can see that in the update function, right, here's my scenes update function. Right now it's empty. I'm going to put all my game objects that I want to update in here, in my update method of the scene class. So it's going to cascade. So all my objects are going to update in the scene, my scene is going to update in the game, and then that's how it's going to work. Okay. Later on, we can make all the scene class and the game objects update themselves. For now, let's leave it like this. I'm going to put this up on GitHub. So I'm going to say completed FSM, so finite state machine version 2. That's what I just did, which is I fixed it and I completed it, and I'm going to put it up on GitHub. And then for the most part, this is everything you need. This is everything you need as a template to move on. I can make my whole game from here now. Does that make sense? Because I have my transitions, I have my scenes. Okay, what I want to do now is a couple things before we go on break, because we've only gone for about just under an hour, and I want to give these guys a chance. Are you guys almost ready? You're ready? Okay. So what I'm going to do is let's take a short break, and when we come back after they've done their little presentation, I'm going to go into making a full game, right, with this template. All right. I'm going to share this with you, and you can use this as a base for what you're going to do next week with your first playable. Okay. So let's take a short break. I'm going to stop recording. Before we stop recording, I want the team to come up and do a little presentation, and then we'll take a break. Okay. Is that okay?